Namaste, Smriti ji, and Suprabhatam to everybody.
Namaste Anuradha ji and Suprabhatam to everyone. Very happy to be conversing here with Anuradha ji, a good friend of mine, as part of this session on the ancient women of Bharat and how they represented a certain leadership paradigm. In today's society, we do see different kinds of interesting leadership. But then the question always is there in terms of how was it in the ancient times? What role did women play? And who were the interesting women whose lives we can learn from? And how did they, at that point in time, shift the history, created a paradigm shift in different spheres of life and influence? So that is what we are here to converse about. We are also going to talk about a few things, aspects of our own personal lives, and the kind of women that we draw inspiration from, and how it has helped us, shape our journey as far as we have come today. So, Anuradha ji, over to you for some insights and how we can start this conversation.
So I think, Smriti ji, the best way to do it is to talk about ourselves and then see who were the sources of our inspiration. So I'd just like to start by asking you about your story, in the sense that you are now a guru ma of an ashram, but you didn't start out that way. You were a very technical engineer person, and then you suddenly you moved on to becoming a guru ma, starting your own gurukulam, the Anaadi Foundation, and many more now that are mushrooming around the world, if I may say so. And I know that you also teach at IIT Delhi and many other eminent institutions of the country, very modern technical institutions. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story? How do you balance all of these different aspects of your own life and the roles you play there?
So, whenever we talk about women leadership, the natural thing that comes to mind, everybody's mind, is the aspect of multitasking. Right? I've known Anuradha ji for quite some time, so I can say that the kind of roles that she plays has a very significant impact on the nation's, development as such. But happy to share some, aspects of my own journey here. I've been I did my computer science and engineering, and then worked in the software industry for some time. And then, my husband Adinarayanan and I started Anaadi Foundation in 2015. Before that, we were both professors of computer science for more than a decade. And while we were in the industry, we used to joke that no matter how long we work in front of the computer, 16, 17 hours, that thing wouldn't get inspired. So we wanted that human touch, for which we shifted to the academia, and then we started our own ashram. We have a gurukulam now. The family has grown. The aspect of womanhood that has come, you can say handy, or the natural thing, is a sense of embracing the expansion. So I've never thought about myself as an individual. Of course, there have been situations when I have to sort of care about myself, my own aspirations, or whatever. But then it also is subsumed within the larger social good as well. So when you talk about motherhood, I've never seen myself as the mother of my own two children alone. It means that my own students are my children, the Gurukulam students are my children, and the larger society itself. You have that matritva bhava towards them. Then what happens is that you start working not just for your own growth. Of course, your own growth happens in this process, but then you always think about the well-being of others. So that way, that and I have seen so many women have this approach to life. Your own mother, just reflect on your own mother. You will tell her, like, please sit on the sofa, or sit down and take some rest. Why don't you lie down for some time? But then she'll be like, I need to do this, only then I'm going to take rest for today. Right? So that kind of thing, when it expands to an organization, that is what I have been able to bring forth, thanks to the wonderful women around me who have inspired me, the shastras, the women in the shastras who have inspired me, and which we will both of us be talking about as part of this session. But then, of course, I would love to hear from Anuradha ji as well. She is a globe trotting professor who's taken, Indian psychology to many, many countries and inspired her own students. So, what has been your journey, Anuradha ji?
So, I'd like to start by saying that I was extremely fortunate to have grown up in the Sri Aurobindo ashram. So, in a very spiritual atmosphere, where one of the main focuses of the philosophy was never to, first and foremost, distinguish us as men and women, male and female. The whole idea, and which is repeated throughout the philosophy, is that essentially everybody is a human soul. So, if we can look beyond our apparent differences and cater to the growth of the individual in their essence, then the sky is the limit. There is never a barrier, and one can really strive to achieve anything that one wants to. And as you're also aware, this is very much in line with the ancient philosophy, where there is this original concept of the ardhanarishwara, the idea that every individual incarnates both the male and the female aspects, and they're not in conflict with each other, but they're actually there to complement. The more we can reflect that in our societal activities, in the way we deal with everyone around us, uh, that would only help to strengthen one's own confidence in the fact that we are not limited by the biological identity that we are born with to that extent. So, because I grew up in the ashram school where we did sports and we did everything with the boys alongside without ever, worrying about our separate identities. Uh, I then went on to study Sanskrit, and then Sanskrit, of course, uh, gives a very high position to women in different contexts of philosophy, of in terms of writers, in terms of many other aspects. And so there was, and I was also very fortunate actually in my own progression through life, that while I studied Sanskrit, I had very senior scholars, very, very senior scholars, who were willing to discuss matters with me literally at par. They never made me feel that, I'm a woman, I'm separate, I'm a much junior person. They gave me the opportunity, and I think that has been the biggest strength in my life, including my PhD guide, Professor K. Dharan, very senior scholar. There was one Professor Shivat Sankacharya, very, very aged and very knowledgeable. So they were for me living examples of what might have been the situation in ancient India, where within this parampara of the teacher and the taught, the Guru Shishya parampara, there was really the encouragement of the individual and the merit that the individual is capable of, of displaying and growing along with. So that was my foundations, and then of course I was extremely fortunate that Sanskrit was my passport to the world, and through Sanskrit, the yoga world and many others. So what I've found in my travels across the world, that what really matters is that people don't necessarily regard you as a man or a woman. What really matters to people, especially if you are someone who has something to offer to the world, then their primary focus would be to look at you as a human being and to get from you what is valuable for them. So I think that has been I've been very fortunate, and I think that I have also found people, both men and women, who have respected and regarded this aspect of my life and also valued Sanskrit. So I think the whole thing of Sanskrit and Sanskriti, one who possesses Sanskrit and Sanskriti also has a certain position in society which is valued by those who recognize the wisdom that this knowledge has to give. So,
Wonderfully, wonderfully said. As you rightly said, Anuradha ji, the Vedantic vision is in terms of that everything is divine and everything is, of course, the supreme consciousness. But of course, when it comes to Vyavahara, each of us play different roles, whether it is gender-based roles or whether it is the social roles or whatever it is. When it comes to Vyavahara, of course, all of us play different roles, as you rightly said. In fact, you brought out this context of traveling throughout the world and looking at various communities and cultures. So at Anaadi Foundation, we work with native cultures of different countries and look at their educational ecosystems. And what we found interacting with many of these people is that women play a very important role in terms of being custodians of very valuable knowledge systems. When I say women, it's not just about the role of a teacher in the school or in that particular native culture. It is also, in fact, the grandmothers or the mothers that also are custodians of knowledge. So when we traditionally, even if you take in Bharat, for instance, whether it is the role in the home or whether it is in the ashrama that a Rishika plays or a Vedic Rishika plays, or whether it is a Gurukulam, or whether it is an organization, or even the palaces of the various kings, women played an important role in being custodians of very valuable knowledge in terms of the health and well-being of the people associated in that sphere of influence. Also custodians of, in terms of even financial prosperity of that particular community, and also ensuring that the traditional knowledge is preserved and transmitted from one generation to another. So, from a very, very long time, since ancient time, women have been a very important part of preserving and propagating native cultures. And that has been true in India as well. When you look back at your own family, say, for example, 3, 4 generations ago, of course, many of us don't have access to what was our family like few generations ago. But if you've had the opportunity to look at it, you would see that women played a very central role in sort of determining the food practices that would be followed in the family, the health practices that would be followed in the family, the kind of educational ecosystems that the children would be part of, even say career trajectory that members of the family would take. So they were very key decision makers in the family. That is what I understood when I look at history or my own family or the native communities across the world. And in fact, in Sanskritam, they beautifully say, "Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha." So wherever women are worshipped, the gods resides there. So that has been, core to Indian or Bharatiya parampara, that women, of course, they need to be respected, but they go one step ahead in saying that, women need to be worshipped because the kind of multifarious roles that they play in the society. So would love to hear Anuradha ji's, thoughts on these as well.
Yes. So as you were saying that one is, of course, the important idea that women have been custodians of knowledge. And I think one of the important ideas to also break in the contemporary world when we're talking of women, their empowerment, and also them standing, on shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts, is the fact that the woman is capable of uh, great wisdom, and because she's also intrinsically the mother, the worldview that she incarnates is very holistic. So when we put such women in the heart of leadership, their natural instinct is to look at the system more holistically and see how they are able to facilitate the growth of every individual within that society. And these can be almost considered as intrinsic natures of the woman because of the role that she plays in society as such. So we see these examples in certain ancient women within our own civilization. So would you also like to talk of some of them that inspired you personally in your journey?
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. And whether you look at the Vedas or the Upanishads for that matter, or you look at the Mahabharata and many of the Itihasa Purana, there have been women, characters or rishikas who have the potential to inspire even today's youngsters for that matter. So let us take the example of Maitreyi, who is the Dharma Patni of Yagyavalkya Maharishi. So there is a beautiful conversation that happens, which is recorded in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Yagyavalkya Maharishi wanted to sort of give away his wealth because he wanted to take sannyasa. And then he said, okay, I have my wealth. There is Katyayani, there is Maitreyi. Let me offer my wealth to these people. Then Maitreyi has this question to Yagyavalkya Maharishi that if suppose I take up all of this wealth, will this grant me what we call as immortality or amritatva, right? And Yagyamvalkya Maharishi clarifies saying that, of course, monetary wealth cannot grant you, and what can grant you is the true knowledge of the self. And he goes on to share a lot of insights with Maitreyi. So you see that Maitreyi was a woman of great wisdom, and who had exposure to the core concepts of the Vedas, which made her question about the larger purpose of life and how to lead life so that one can reach the state of understanding one's true nature and one's true self. So such women have been recorded in history, and of course Gargi, who was a female scholar. And then we read about her, she is one of the ratnas in the court of King Janaka, and she had this debate with Yagyavalkya about the nature of the Brahman and the entire architecture of what supports this entire creation. And of course, at some point in time, Yagyavalkya Maharishi had to tell her that, Amma Podum, enough of this debate. We have been debating for quite some time. And then he brings this debate to an important conclusion. But then through this discourse, we do understand the level of scholarship that Karki had. And if that level of scholarship is visible, it means that there should have been an educational ecosystem in place, whether at home or outside. That all that is not so very well recorded in history, but nevertheless we know that there should have been an educational ecosystem in place which brought out these gems in repeatedly in the history. And when we look at Gargi or Maitreyi, these are not one-off examples. These are representative of the kind of education that women received at that point in time, the access to education that was there, and the kind of wisdom that they developed through these, educational content, the narrative at that point in time, the access that was given, and the highest. So, looking at the lives of these women, we come to know of the kind of educational ecosystem that was prevalent at that point in time, the kind of access that they received, and the kind of equal footing that was given, respecting their scholarship. As Anuradha ji beautifully mentioned, it was not about giving, some kind of a prominent position to a woman. It was about the kind of scholarship she possessed, which basically gave her that sthana in the society.
So, as you were saying that the ecosystem, definitely there was an important ecosystem that facilitated that the flourishing of such women. Because unless there was a support, unless they had the education to allow them to grow and to express themselves in their true potential, we would not be remembering them, or they would not be such revered women in our culture, in our cultural memory. So, but that is also because, there is this, the verse that you mentioned from Manu Smriti, which says that Yatra Naryastu Pujyante Ramante Tatra Devataha. So, which says that where the women are worshipped, there the gods also rejoice. But the second part of it was equally important, which sometimes we tend to forget, which which says that Yatrai Tastu na Pujyante Sarvas Tatra Phalah Kriyah. So where women are not revered or they are not given their due position, there all the works that are undertaken will not reach their fulfillment. So I think these are important aspects that we need to keep in mind. And we see that since these were ingrained ideas civilizationally, we provided the spaces for women to discover their potential. As you mentioned rightly, that in scholarship we see women, great women like Gargi, Maitri, Apala, there are ever so many of them. But then when you also see them in the battlefield, so in ancient times we of course have the story of Kaikeyi. In fact, when Dasharatha was wanting to flee, she says nothing doing, and she took up arms. So, what was that ecosystem that trained a queen to become a warrior on the field even when her husband is ready to flee? So, that was one that we see in the Mahabharata, in the Itihasa. But then moving on, we see that in real life also there have been ever so many queens who have stood their ground, who have resisted great invaders, and they have been great examples, like Rani Rudrama Devi, for example. She was in the Telangana or Kakatiya dynasty, and she defended the kingdom against several internal rebellions and threats, and also she made these forts of the Varangal fort, etc. So they were not just protectors of their people, but they were also builders. We hear of ever so many queens who built water, who made water conservation arrangements. So we have Queen Udaymati, who built the Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat, which is a phenomenal architectural wonder. So they were not just mother figures who were just nurturing their children as they grew up. They were ensuring that every requirement of society was well catered to. Or we have Rani Durgavati from the Gondawa region. She fought the Mughals, and she was known for her exceptional archery skills and military leadership. And fearless, because she would rather have killed. I mean, she died rather than surrender. So, what is normally associated with women as being incapable, possibly at the last point, is something that has been defied by the practical example of many of such valiant warrior women. I mean, the story of Rani Lakshmibai is famous, that she even jumped off the fort with the child on her back. And, so these are images. We don't know whether it actually happened as such or not. But the fact is that in the cultural memory, these women have inspired generations, not just of women again, but they've also inspired generations of men to stand for the values of patriotism, to stand for the values of being able to just uphold loyalty, to do your duty, to protect those who are in need. So I think these are some fantastic qualities that are ingrained in our blood. And because we are inheritors of these, let's say we are inheritors of these great figures, I think that these also are there somewhere deep in our DNA. And I think if women or wake up to this own Shakti within, there's nothing that can ever come in their way of proving themselves in every single field. So, what would you like to add to this?
Very true, very true. I think it is the right time to invoke the Shakti, in the society as such. Because on one side, women feel that more empowerment is needed. I think it is just about awakening what is there already within, because we have such a rich cultural history of these great women, as you mentioned, beautifully listed the wonderful women in the history. At this juncture, I'm just reminded of a very interesting aspect that is mentioned in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, of course, has so many interesting women. If you look at it that way, you've had Gandhari, for instance, Ganga, for instance, who agreed to be the mother of the Ashtavasus, who were, of course, cursed in a previous lifetime because they were part of stealing Vasishta's cow. And then she agreed to be a mother, but of course, she had the tough job of letting the children into the river. Even though the entire kingdom was like shocked by her action, but then she agreed to do that. But then, of course, she also was the mother of the great Bhishma. She was instrumental in ensuring that he developed the right kind of skills to govern, or assist in the governing process as such. Then we've had Satyavati, who ensured that the race will propagate, because at a very critical juncture, when there was nobody to take forward, or continue the family lineage, then Satyavati played a very important role. That is what we see. But of course, who inspires timelessly is, of course, Draupadi in the Mahabharata. Draupadi is one woman who's undergone a lot of hardships. If you look at it, a queen who was born out of the yajna that her father conducted, such an illustrious family that she came from. Of course, she went through a lot of hardships, but nevertheless, there is a wonderful conversation between Draupadi and Satyabhama. So Satyabhama visits Draupadi and she asks Draupadi that, see, this Pandava brothers are so devoted to you. They always are like a bee. They are always around you. So what is this magic mantram tantram did you do that they are devoted to you? Then Draupadi, of course, is a proud woman. She says, those are all ways of wicked women. I don't need all of that. That's just the very way I live and lead my life. Everybody feels inspired to be around me. And then she goes on to describe the kind of activities and schedule that she has. Of course, she talks about how she is the first one to wake up in the palace and the last one to go to bed. And she also talks about the kind of mental attitude she has, like, without jealousy, without disrespect for the elders in the palace, how she used to conduct her life, even the kind of clothing that she used to wear. She used to be mindful of who is around her, not to offend the sensibilities of the people around her. That is how she used to design her attire for the day. And the other, she also brings out very important leadership qualities over there, or leadership tasks that she used to take care of. She says that during the expeditions that the Pandava brothers used to say for example, Yudhishthira used to go out on an expedition. Then there used to be several Brahmanas, Nataka Brahmanas, who used to accompany, about 80,000 of them used to accompany them. And then they were all taken care and fed under her supervision. So there were more than 100,000 maid servants in the palace, and she used to take care of all their activities, draw up the schedule, who does what are the various complaints that she receives from them. And of the palace staff, she used to know every little detail about their personal lives, the kind of the family that they have, who is present that day, who is absent that day, the livestock that was there in the Rajya. And not only that, she was the only Pandava of the Pandava. She was the only one who knew the exact amount of income and expenditure of the royal treasury, for that matter. And she ensured that there is a sustenance, consistent sustenance through the various yajna karmas that were performed. So you would see that it was a life of day and night, of sacrifice, of personal comfort and rest, ensuring that everybody in the palace is taken care of. Of course, even though you can see that she did not probably go out there in the open field and then fight the war, but she was playing a very crucial role of ensuring back home there is this entire mechanism. Now we talk about front office and back office, right? The front office wouldn't function without the back office. So you need that operation to be running in full swing without a day of, now we talk about Six Sigma perfection, right? Where there are no, bugs or no, you can say issues that arise. So if you had to have every day do that Six Sigma level of perfection, then you need a leader like Draupadi. There's so much to draw from her own life as inspiration.
Yes, that's there's so much to actually know about, and I think uh, one of the biggest requirements of our times is the need to familiarize ourselves with some of these stories. I think that before we had, let's say, the modern system of education, these stories were part of every household. Every all grandparents would pass on these stories, and so children grew up with these ideals in their mind. They knew these various names, but gradually, with the coming in of different kinds of influences, we have got a little disconnected from the deeper, or rather, the facts of women who have been outstanding in their respective fields. I was just also looking up some other female characters, some female queens who were very inspiring. And I found the name of Rani Dida, who was from Kashmir. And this is like the, 10th century the 10th century in the Common Era. And so what they're saying is that she was from the Lohara dynasty in Kashmir. And she was the regent queen who ruled instead of her son initially, but then she led for almost 40 years, and she ensured that there was stability across the kingdom. And you have her in Kashmir, and you have similar aspects like all the way down in the 10th centuries. At the same time, we've got Sembiya and Mahadevi. She was the queen of the Chola dynasty, the mother of King Uttama Chola, a great patron of Shaivism. So we're seeing that they're also promoters of philosophy. Then she gave a lot of donations to temple constructions, etc. So we are seeing that she was responsible for the cultural renaissance in Tamil Nadu. And East, West, we find these women characters who have played a significant role in creating the history of this nation as it stands today. What is required is for us to again familiarize ourselves with many of their deeds so that they can serve as inspirations and remind us that in this society, at least, unlike, let's say, in the Western world, where the whole movement of feminism was like a rebellion in sorts against the male domination. But when we look at the Indian idea, we see that here there was never the struggle of a woman trying to outdo her or to prove herself equal to the man. She was always at par in any given field, be it from knowledge giving or in the field of in the field of warfare, in the field of administration, in the field of arts, in any field, or even in the field of bhakti. We have Mirabai, outstanding uh, figure of, figure saint, if I may say, or bhakta, in more in our own terms, an outstanding bhakta who represented the fact that a woman can, overcome anything. Uh, if she has found her calling, then society also accepted her as a great devotee of Lord Krishna. So there was, in fact, a story of her going to meet one of the sages of her time, and when she went there, she was told that no, he only meets men. So she says that, oh, I thought, that Krishna was the only man and we were all women. So again, philosophy that has played a significant role in connecting us to our potential as individuals and what we can offer on that basis. So, is there a what would you add to this? Of maybe the question that we also need to look at is how can we in our modern world draw inspiration from these? And very often there are challenges of breaking the glass ceiling, and there are these kinds of limits, self-imposed and sometimes circumstantial, systemic limitations. So, what can we draw inspiration from to say that there is never a need to step back? We can always be there at par, and also to be inspiring role models for all kinds of people in our care.
Uh, it's a very pertinent question that you have asked, and it's worth discussing it in today's times. Personally, when I look at how, when I reflect on the aspect of this competition, right? You said, like, let me be equal to the other, kind of a thing, or let me be better than the other, or whatever. This aspect of competition comes when we are not exactly comfortable or sure with the role that we have in the society, in any aspect for that matter. Like, for example, in a classroom full of students, why would one student compete with the other? When compete in the sense, why should they want to be better than the other or equal to the other when they don't feel very comfortable with just who they are, as a person, as a learner, as a student, for that matter? So, in time and again in the history, the people that we have spoken about, whether it is Maitreyi, Gargi, or the various queens that you spoke about, and of course, we drew inspiration from Draupadi as well. They've all understood their role in the society very, very well. So, only with that understanding, one can keep progressing from wherever they are. If we keep questioning, like, do I have a role in the society? Am I an important person? Then we wouldn't progress at all. If just imagine, even for one day, if our mother starts asking this question, I'm sure the whole house would, collapse. Right? We all, as young people, we wouldn't know what to do if one day she takes a break. We don't know what to do. Or if she has this question, like, what am I doing in this family? Then all of us wouldn't have grown up the way we have grown up. So the question is, there has always been, she's understood her role quite well, and always that has been the base on which she operated. So similarly, when we look at these women in history, whether it is Maitreyi, Gargi, the scholars that we have come across, the queens that we have come across, or the bhaktas like Mirabai, very comfortable with who they are, and that is how they have built their own identity around that. So, at this time, when we draw inspiration from the great women, we also understand the very important role that we play in our own families, in the role in our own communities, in the society, in the nation, and the world at large. Then it becomes a very smooth process for us, not keeping on questioning, am I important to the society, and then sort of regressing from whatever we have already built. In fact, you would see that there was Padma Shri awardee, Lakshmi Kuti, for that matter. Right? Lakshmi Kuti is a very famous healer, traditional healer, tribal woman, and she could remember more than 500 varieties of medicine. if you look at her, a very simple seedha sada woman, you wouldn't think, she's probably a medical graduate from a great university, or all those airs. But then you would see that the kind of transformation that she was able to give in her own community, that took care of the health needs of such a large population, wherever she was interacting. And so you see that in whatever role one performs, if one is comfortable, understands that role better, understands the significance of the role better, then we become very comfortable, and then we progress from there. That is what I feel history has to teach when we look at the lives of great women.
Yeah, so just based on what you were saying, I think it's also important to create that ecosystem in our current times also, because those women were capable of achieving the feats that they did because of what was offered to them. So for example, we also hear that during the Mahajanapada, during that period, women got several kinds of education. So they were educated in the social, political. They also had the rights to, they had property rights, trade and craft, religious contributions. They were very powerful influencers. As in the advisory role, they played important roles in marriage alliances. So between kingdoms, they were able to forge strong alliances and support their husbands in different roles. And of course, the motherhood of leaders we see, as even in Shivaji Maharaj's case, how his mother really stood there and became was a pillar of his greatness. So we also see that in order to achieve all of that, the kind of education that has to be given is something that is very holistic in nature, and holistic in a manner that is allowing women to fall back on several of these great women leaders. So introducing them in our curriculum, I think, is one of the very important factors that for different, unless we are reading of them in our books and we know that there have been significant contributors, women contributors throughout the history of Bharata, we would not think of ourselves as capable of taking up those positions. But if from a very young age a girl is exposed to the potentials and the kind of spaces that this culture has provided women, at the same time empowering her with the idea of her inherent shakti, I think that is she can only go from strength to strength. But as we also saw that in ancient times, like a queen was getting trained in every skill of life. It was not just a skill of being capable of fighting at the battlefront, but it was also a skill at home. So she had to know the 64 kalas. She had to be well versed in the different cuisines. She had to know how to make all the different flower arrangements. She had to know how to converse with the maids around her. So it was a grooming which was very holistic. So if we can find ways of bringing back those kinds of ecosystems within our education system, I think we will look forward to a much more healthy environment where both men and women are exposed to the richness of possibilities that are not dependent on the gender that they incarnate in terms of just the man or a woman what they're born into, but that they're able to look at the roles that they're playing and have the confidence that we can, just as a queen, let's say, just as Rani Lakshmi Bai did it, or Rani Durga Devi did it. So we can also take up all these positions and fight no matter what comes in order to prove our position. No.
Very, very, very true. If you look at it, see, one question that often arises is like, what is the kind of education that they receive? We've been speaking about so much about the educational ecosystem that created these women, in fact. So when we look at it from a today's context, now we have the schooling system, the university system, and we have such a huge women participation. For example, when I was working in the university, we did something called I was part of a group that was working on women in computing, because they did see that women participated in computing, but then to rise in the ranks of the computer science field in terms of very deep research or occupying top positions in corporate companies, there was some gap So this particular forum wanted to address those gaps in terms of enhancing the participation of women in the computing process. So this we imagine when we look at the ancient times, because we to this is called presentism, like evaluating the past with today's lens. So we have this university schooling system and all of that, but when you look at the past, home based education was equally valid. Not everybody went to a gurukula. Even amongst the male members, not everybody went to a gurukula, studied under the guru, in a residential manner. So there were diverse kinds of educational modes that were offered. And women, a good part of the women, of course, their participation in the schooling system has been recorded in history. But nevertheless, when we look at the very ancient times, home-based education did play a very significant role in terms of these kalas that they picked up, and even the administrative capabilities, because you would see that a full-time availability was needed in order to pick up some of them. Like, the dinacharya itself was very crucial aspect of the learning process, like waking up early, having, maintaining the shaucha of the body, maintaining shaucha of the mind, engaging in simple vyayama and yogic practices, and appropriately having a mental attitude towards others, and then taking care of your daily routine, which is aligned with the daily as well as the seasonal routines. All this was part of a woman's learning. And that is when we also draw from inspiration from, as you mentioned, about the various queens like Lakshmi Bai, how she fought at those times. Now we have cutting edge technologies that are available. If we look at the war front today, it is probably in terms of how women can participate in the AI revolution, for that matter, right? So it's all about picking up the relevant skills, understanding what is required for today, and what is our role in the whole thing, and then latching onto it and quickly contributing to that. Even if you look at the life of, say, Ahilya Bai Holkar, I always draw inspiration from her life because she did remarkable things. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law identified that she is the one who is capable of taking forward the vision of the kingdom for the future. And then she ruled for a good, about 30 years or so, unmatched in her administrative capability, whether it is warfare or whether it is the welfare of the kingdom, and it was sort of a golden period in Malwa's history, her rule basically. And she used to meet tens of thousands of people, scholars, musicians who came across India asking her for funding, so a platform to perform, and all of that. And then she was instrumental in restoring many of the temples that we see today. For example, Kashi Vishwanath Mandir, she played a very important role, and we are all enjoying the benefits of what has happened today in terms of the corridor and everything. Ahilya Bai Holkar ji has had a very significant role there. And whether it is Somanath Mandir, or whether it is the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir, or Rameshwaram in the south, all of these, there is Ahilya Bai Holkar ji's hand there in terms of building chatrams, annakshetrams, and creating provisions for yatris. And the way she used to do it is, whatever resource was available locally, put these things together and then make that happen. So it represents a very, very resourceful mind set, and that is what women need to draw from. Whatever resources are available in the current time, you just make use of it, put together. Always draw inspiration from your own mother. If suddenly a guest shows up, whatever ingredients are available in the kitchen, you just pick it up and then quickly make a meal for them. So whatever ingredients are available in the society at that point in time, you just have to have that resourcefulness. You bring that together and then make a mark for yourself, and also contribute to the society in that manner, right? So there is so much, as you rightly said. And when I was talking about these women to some of my students in the class, so I had this interesting episode. So there was this one girl who stood up and said, I attended my sister's wedding recently, and then the bride and the groom, in the broad daylight, they were taken outside to see the Arundhati star. Why is it even happening in broad daylight when you can't see the star? Then all of them in the class clapped because she caught me with a point there. Then I told her that it's not about seeing a star in the daylight. Of course, the star is always there, even though you can't see. That is one part of it. But the second aspect is, why in a wedding are we made to view Arundhati star? Because Arundhati and Vasishta are part of the Ursa Major constellation. And the beauty is that even modern science talks about them as Alcor and Mizar, which are binary star systems, who rotate around a common center of gravity and also around themselves. So this is like the husband and wife who go around each other because they are devoted to each other, and also go around the common center, which is dharma, whether it is their family dharma, whether it is their societal dharma, or whether it is their national dharma. It means that Arundhati and Vasishta represents the aspect of equality in a relationship, not a dominant, subservient kind of a relationship. So, in time and again in the Itihasa Purana, you find Ma Arundhati offering, in being invoked and offering counseling to the various, important women that are listed in the Itihasa Purana. So that way you see, whether it is the wedding, or whether it is the Vedic tradition, whether it is scholarship, or whether it is bhakti, or even nation building, women have been at the forefront. And these are not like, one of case studies that somehow they did it in spite of all the hostile situations. No, it's not that way. It is because the soil itself was created for this human flourishing to sort of come out. And they represented the ethos, the social ethos at that point in time, which made this possible. I'm sure you would agree with this, Anuradha ji.
Yes, very much so. And because you mentioned Rani Ahilyabai Holkar ji, who was, in the 17th century, we see that a century before that also, these exactly what you've talked about, that the women were not just playing one central role, they were very pervasive in their influence across different dimensions of societal existence. So, for example, we have, I mentioned Rani Durgavati earlier on, who was the queen of Gond. And we see that beyond warfare, she was also an administrative reformer. She looked after her sons, the kingdom, because he was too young after her husband's death. She improved the agricultural productivity. And one of the things that came up with agricultural productivity was also the water conservation techniques. So she built a lot of irrigation canals, promoted farming, etc. And then she also strengthened the local governance, allowing a lot of harmony to happen between the tribal religions, Hindu administrative systems. So we also, through their stories, learn of these existing diversities, but how they played a role in keeping them together. And then, of course, she was also a very big patron of the arts and cultures. She supported literature, music, temple building. She encouraged local tribal art forms, blended them with Hindu culture, as I also mentioned. Then she was also a champion of justice, where she held a lot of public hearings. So we see the mother, she's not just the mother of her own child, as you rightly said when you talked about your own example, that when you think of motherhood, you're not just the mother of your own children, but because you are you're the Guru Ma of your ashram, you also feel responsible for all the other children as part of your care. So the same, it's like a parampara. This is really coming down in the Guru Shishya parampara, where the Guru Mas have always incarnated the role of looking beyond their personal boundaries and including the larger context, and which is very much again in line with the philosophy of this land, which is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this regard for the woman, who not just the woman, but the idea of being the integrator of beyond our personal boundaries. So you incorporate everybody, you look after the well-being. It becomes a responsibility of every individual to look after the well-being of people beyond your own limited circles. So, and as women rulers, they were in a position to ensure that their praja, their citizens, were part of that larger family. And she also had these very powerful diplomatic skills, where it was a time during the Mughal periods. So she was able to deal with them in a manner to successfully. And it's interesting how she was able to hold her own place, because again, power respects power. So if somebody is incarnating that kind of a strength, it automatically begets that kind of a respect from the other side also. We also have, there was this very interesting story about Rani Apaka Chauta, who again in the 16th century, so she was a queen of Ullal, and she has a different dimension to her because she was a very strong naval innovator. She had strengthened the local fleets. She made very powerful, lightweight, maneuverable ships, guerrilla warfare. She was encouraging maritime trade. And what I read about her, she was encouraging this maritime trade across Arab, Africa, Southeast Asia. All of this was being encouraged by her. And she actually managed to keep the Portuguese away and ensured that her region of Ullal had economic independence and prosperity for the fishermen, for the traders. So we see that this concern was there for every segment of society, not just for the larger or the important sections, but every segment, because of the recognition again that every segment contributes significantly to the overall prosperity. And it's in that context also that if, as as in our work, in the present context, where women comprise a very big part of our entire population. If women are kept aside, then we see that we are weakening ourselves as a nation by not incorporating their skills, their knowledge, giving them the role that they can play in becoming, fosterers of certain development and prosperity within their own circles. So we see these phenomenal women leaders across our history, starting from great scholarship, as we talked of Gargi, Maitri. You remember we also discussed about the, the wife of Mandana Mishra, Bharati Mishra, who was made the judge to decide in the debate between the discussion of Shankaracharya, who was spreading Advaita all over, and Mandana Mishra, who was from the Mimamsaka school. So she was made the judge, and she said, "Sorry, I don't have the time to sit here." So she came up with an innovative way of assessing who would be the winner by giving them a garland, and the garland would fade. And she had much to lose also, because if he lost, if her husband lost the debate, then he would adopt sannyasa, which means that her grihastha life would be compromised. And yet we see that these women were able to side with dharma, that if they had the role of being a judge, then there was no question of a personal, a narrower thinking taking over and influencing or causing a bias that would favor their own party. So we see these instances of great objectivity, fairness, rightness in leadership uh, as exemplary throughout our historical development. So, Smriti ji, anything that you would like to add on these lines, and especially in the context of the Karmayogi program for the for the governance system? What would you like to share as maybe tips of wisdom or just your own background? What would you like to add here that can be of value to their lives?
This conversation itself has been quite enlightening in terms of exchanging notes about the great women that we've come to know of, read about, personally inspired our own lives. So if you look at it, whether it is physical strength or emotional strength or cognitive strength or even spiritual strength for that matter, women have excelled at different points of history. That is what we see. And as part of the Karma Yogi mission, of course, knowing about these women is probably one important step that all the citizens of the country should probably come to know of the contribution of these great women. Of course, we have been managed to list only a minuscule part of this whole dimension, and there are so many more people that history has recorded, not recorded, probably also that are out there. We can That's an effort that we can take in terms of and the other aspect is, of course, one is women, but the aspect of what does that feminine energy bring in, or the feminine qualities that bring in terms of, as you rightly beautifully said, that integrating factor, that embracing factor. So what are the qualities that we can actually learn from some of these women leaders, and how as a nation, as people serving the society, we can incorporate, whether it's a man or a woman, but what are these inherent qualities, like, for example, matritva bhava, seva bhava, the sense of justice, the sense of rightness, right, and a sense of fairness. At the same time, integrating and embracing multiple thought processes, the aspect of resourcefulness, having the necessary empathy and kindness, but at the same time, not having it in a misplaced manner. Just as our, mother would discipline us, but at the same time would offer a chocolate at the end of the disciplining session, right? So there is this aspect of carrot and stick, a sense of fairness and justice is there. So these are some qualities that we can draw from the lives of the women and incorporate it in the larger framework of how we can serve the society. So if we can bring out these as part of the Karma Yogi mission, in terms of what kind of qualities that I need to enshrine, so that the feminine aspect is also brought out. It's not just about achieving a goal, achieving a target, making the numbers, crunching the numbers. Um, it's not about aggression. It's about the larger vision, and then having the necessary compassion, empathy, kindness, and a sense of purpose in doing all of this. I think that would be a valuable thing for all of us who are involved in some form of public seva or the other, in fact.
Yes. So I'd just like to add to that as to, what has been my personal takeaway from our conversation here. So I think for me, the most valuable point that I would like to share also with our audience here is the fact that the salient feature for all these women was their belief in themselves. They were never limited either by the training that they had, by the fact that they are men. So I'd just like to share here what has been my takeaway from our very enriching conversation. Otherwise, so I think for me the most important point to draw inspiration from was the fact that none of the women that we've discussed about was ever limited by their womanness. In fact, as you rightly mentioned, they were strengthened by them. The fact that they were women gave them the confidence that they can handle whatever role came their way in the best way possible for the greater good of those alongside them and the people that they were responsible for. As we saw, it could have been in the field of education, it could be in the field of administration, it could have been in the field of commerce or arts or finance. But the woman who believed in herself was one who was able to successfully carry out whatever responsibility was entrusted upon them. And I think that that would be the learning that I take from this conversation. And also the message that I would like to share is that uh, what matters ultimately is that we rely on the capacity that we incarnate as individuals, and never to forget recognition of the woman power is embedded in the daily prarthana that we are invited to do as Bharatiyas. So every morning when we wake up, we are supposed to look at our hands and say this particular shloka, which says Karagre Vasate Lakshmi, Karamadhye Saraswati, Karamule Sthita Gauri, Prabhate Karadarshanam. So every morning when we wake up, we say that in the tips of our fingers is Lakshmi, in the center of our palms is Saraswati, in the base of our palms is Gauri or Parvati, and every morning we should look at our hands. And what does that remind us of? So Lakshmi here is symbolic of the wealth that we have. Saraswati represents the base of knowledge that is available for us. And at the base, we have Parvati or Gauri, who's the wife of Shiva herself, and she represents the force, the mother force of life. So when we look at our hands every morning and we remind ourselves that we have these in our own hands, then there is nothing that can literally stop us from achieving whatever goals we choose to achieve. So I think with these words, Smriti ji, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to have this conversation with you on Mission Karma Yogi.
Yeah.
So, thank you very
Same,
much.
same here. And just a parting note that the word Karma Yogi, when you listen, the women leadership is basically inherently Karma Yogic that way. So it resonates very well with the principle of women leadership, actually. It's
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful to have had this conversation, Anuradha ji.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Namaste.